Well, g'day guys. In today's stuff column I talk about Greenpeace's nitrogen ban, and I make the contention that instead of hindering the dairy industry by banning nitrogen, you might actually increase the dairy industry. So I start off by talking about how important nitrogen fertilizer is to the global food supply. Some research shows that around 30 to 45% of the global population is dependent on nitrogen fertilizer. Now, I'm all for organics, and I think we probably use way too much nitrogen in New Zealand, but I'm also a realist, and I understand the way the global food system is set up is based around this nitrogen, so banning it is going to have a big effect. Dairy farmers, they're able to handle a no nitrogen fertilizer environment because 70 to 80% of the nitrogen inputs onto their farm actually comes from clover. It doesn't come from nitrogen. They don't actually use a lot of nitrogen, and they probably use more than I'm comfortable with, but it's actually quite common for Fonterra farmers to not use nitrogen at all. I know quite a few who do it. So it's not this game-changing event that Greenpeace say it is by banning nitrogen fertilizer. In fact, I make the point that it'll probably hurt the horticulture industry and the cropping industry more because they rely on nitrogen fertilizer much more because they don't have legumes to fix nitrogen, so they have to replace the nitrogen that the crops take out of the ground with nitrogen fertilizer because it's quick and easy and it's the cheapest way of doing it. So if you ban nitrogen, your cropping farmers, your horticulture farmers who grow carrots and those sorts of things would have to find another way to replace the nitrogen into the soil, so they would essentially be becoming organic. Now, you could have two arguments. You'd say, well, that's good. That forces them to, farm with rotational crops, farm with livestock or legumes and all this sort of stuff, and that would be great. But I have a feeling that they probably won't. They would probably say, well, what's the best way I could make money from my land? And they would say, well, you know what, actually, pasture-based farming is the best way to do it because you can fix all that nitrogen with legumes, and it won't be sheep and beef because that doesn't make much money. But if you look at all these horticulture areas, they're surrounded by dairy farms, and they'd probably sell to the dairy farmer next door, and we'd get more dairy cows rather than less. But I could well be wrong. But anyway, I like to just cause a bit of debate. I like to come at issues from a different angle and just get people thinking. I think people take it a little bit more seriously than I do. All these issues we face are just multifaceted, and there's so many different ways of looking at it. And I just like to get people thinking. So I could be right, I could be wrong. Cheers.